Hey guys, welcome back to KJMETHOD's YouTube channel. As promised, I'm back with contract test review number 2. Again, don't forget I'm rededicating myself to trying to get 1,000, that's right, 1,000 agents to pass their real estate exam by the end of 2025. That means that I need people from all over the place. So don't forget to like, subscribe, tag all your friends who are trying to take the real estate exam. It doesn't matter which state they're in. All right, so without further ado, let's get started. The first question on this test is what would be inserted into a contract if the seller agrees to have a tree cut down for the buyer, but it cannot be done until 2 months after the closing. 2 months after the closing. Would that be an executed contract clause, a survival clause, a contingency clause, or an addendum? Well, we have this very often in contracts where the closing is going to occur, but something needs to be done after the closing. I used to live in a very cold area. We couldn't put a new roof on a property, let's say in January or February. Suppose the seller is supposed to put a new roof on for the buyer. Can't do it until the spring hits. And so what we would do is use what we call a survival clause, because don't forget that when you get to a closing, a contract goes from executory to executed. That means we are done. We are not going to see each other again unless we put a survival clause in there, and then those obligations would continue past the closing date. How is that one for you? All right, number 12. What is the key difference between an agreement to mediate or an agreement to arbitrate? An agreement to mediate or agreement to arbitrate. Two different things. These are just definitional. Mediation is ordered by the court, but arbitration is not. Arbitration is ordered by the court, but mediation is not. With arbitration, the parties are not bound. With mediation, they are bound. And D, with arbitration, the parties are bound. With mediation, they are not. You know, this is pretty simple, right? In certain instances, in certain contracts, there is an agreement to arbitrate or an agreement to mediate. And it's not so much that the court is saying it's voluntary or not voluntary. What really the deal is with arbitration and mediation is if it's arbitration, the parties are going to be bound by the decision of the arbitrator. But if it is mediation, they are not. And you still reserve that right to sue the person. Question number 13. What is the difference between a valid and an enforceable contract? What is the key difference between validity and enforceability? There is no difference in A, and both are required to have in a contract. B, a valid contract means all the elements of contract are present, but enforceable means you can take it to court. C, valid means that you can go to court with the contract, but enforceable means it comports with the statute of frauds. D, valid means it didn't have to be in writing, but enforceable means it had to be in writing. What say you? This is just, do you understand the difference between validity and enforceability? We did a little bit of this in contracts exam number 1. So validity is when all of the elements are present in a contract, but enforceability goes to the statute of frauds, whether or not it can be taken to court or heard in court. If you remember in number 1, what I said to you is that enforceability comes before validity. In other words, you got to cross the enforceability hurdle first. Yes, we did write it down before you get to the validity hurdle. And so the answer here is valid contract means that it has all the elements, but enforceable means you can take it to court. Number 14, very often a real estate contract states that if a purchaser breaches, the seller can keep the earnest money, This would be an example of what? Would that be negotiated terms in a contract? Would that be an example of liquidated damages? An example of specific performance? Or example of damages? Well, this one, guys, is pure definition. Pure definition. Anytime we are saying ahead of time, hey, if you breach, this is what it's going to cost you. And we do it in a lot of different contracts. But for real estate, what do we say? If you breach, I'm going to keep your earnest money. That is a form of a liquidated damage. It's when the person knows the cost of the breach before they even breach. Number 15. Vanessa was hit by a car in 2015. She wanted to sue, but failed to do so until 2022, where we learned that all car accident lawsuits must be brought within 6 years. Vanessa sues anyway, and the court refuses to hear her claim on the basis of what? The court is like, nope, get out of here. I'm not even going to hear your claim. Is that a violation of the statute of frauds? A violation of the doctrine of laches? A violation of a statute of limitations? Or a violation of operation of law? Well, anytime there is a specific time frame in the law, it's specific time frame. It's based on the law. The law just, the judge just looks in the book and goes, nope, you needed to come in 6 years. That is always going to be statute of limitations. Number 16, the statute of frauds indicates that certain contracts be in writing to be enforceable. Well, which contracts? Which contracts? All real estate contracts and all leases? All real estate contracts and some leases, some real estate contracts and some leases, some real estate contracts and all leases. If you remember from the very first contracts test that we took, I said to you, you always want to stay away from these words, all. All is just too definitive. It backs you up into a corner. If you're ever stuck on an exam, avoid that word all, never, always, all of the time. Avoid those words. And so if you do that on this particular one, then the answer is going to be clear. It's going to be C, some real estate contracts and some leases. It's funny to me because some of my students will pick B on this one, all real estate contracts and some leases, and they don't get it. And I'm like, how can you pick all real estate contracts and some leases? Isn't a lease a real estate contract? And then they go, oh, yes, you're right about that. So it can't be all and some. It has to be some and some. We try to stay away from those definitive words. Number 17, the buyer and seller agreed to a purchase price of $450,000, but during the time of the contract, the purchase price is reduced to $425,000 because the inspection revealed many issues. The new price is done by, this one should be easy, amendment to the contract, addenda to the contract, exhibit to the contract, additional signatures on the main contract. Well, that is an amendment. Any changes to the original contract, anything that's going to change the original contract, price, date of closing, the seller's going to give the buyer additional monies at closing, anything of that nature that we're going to put onto the contract afterwards is going to be amendment to the contract. A lot of students pick addendum there. Let me just explain that. An addendum does not change the original contract. It is something that clarifies the original contract. So for example, you know how you'll have a contract, right? And then you'll say, hey, the air conditioning system was fixed in 2024. I'd like to add that to the contract so you know more about the air conditioning system. The most famous one that we have is lead-based paint, right? That's an addenda, an exhibit. We call them addenda or exhibits. But the lead-based paint doesn't change the contract. It doesn't change the main contract. It explains what's going on with this house. So typically, if you want to remember it this way, addenda typically is done at the time of the contract. It's clarification. It's all those extra pages. A, B, C, D, E, F. It's all those extra pages to clarify. But amendment is done after. All right. Let's try number 18. Philip is an agent on a listed property. His seller accepted an offer on the listing 3 weeks ago, but Philip is concerned that the property will not close. So he continually markets this property, indicating that the property is under contract. But that backup offers are going to be accepted. So can we accept backup offers? Sure, we can accept them. And it's a good idea for you to accept them, because that first one, you never know. Can Philip's seller accept an offer on this property? So we know that he can. And it says, no, the property is already under contract. He can't accept any other offers. That's not true. You certainly can, and you should. No, the seller must wait for the purchaser to breach that contract by not purchasing. No, not quite right. Yes, if the new offer has a contingency in it that says it can't be accepted until the other contract is extinguished, meaning that other contract falls through. I like that answer. And then D, yes, offers should be presented and can be accepted at any time. You can't accept an offer if you already have an offer. The only way you can accept it is if it has a contingency in there that essentially says, if this one falls through, I'm next. Okay, you can do that. All right, so number 19, most contracts that assert that genuine assent was missing. You guys know what genuine assent? Genuine assent is like somebody was twisting your arm. They had a gun to your head, right? Or it was under fraud or duress or misrepresentation or something like that. Okay, so if you're going to say genuine assent was missing, then are those contracts valid, voidable, void, or unenforceable? Guys, this one is easy. In most cases, 95% of the time, if the assertion is that there was no genuine assent, that contract is going to be voidable. It's real simple. Fraud, duress, undue influence, negligent misrepresentation, negative fraud, any of those things, right? You're like, I signed it, but I didn't genuinely sign it, so it's going to be voidable. All right, and the last one here is Mary is a seller and has signed an exclusive right to sell listing agreement with Todd as broker. Mary is seeking an offer of $400,000 and wants to close the sale in 30 days. Todd brings a buyer who offers $390,000 and will close in 30 days. Mary agrees to that price, but at the closing, she's like, I'm not paying you, Todd. I got $10,000 less. I'm not paying you. Todd sues. Will he win? No, because he didn't bring a ready, willing, and able buyer to meet the terms. B, no, because although he brought a buyer, it was for less. Mary wanted $400,000. His buyer only had $390,000. Yes, unless Mary could prove that Todd wasn't responsible for bringing the buyer. Is that going to matter in an exclusive right to sell? We know an exclusive right to sell means that it doesn't matter. All that has to happen is that house needs to get sold. It doesn't matter who brought the buyer. And then yes, since Mary entered into the contract, even though it's for less than the asking price. That's right. Once she enters into the contract, if it's less than the asking price, it doesn't matter. She signed the contract. That is an agreement that she is going to move forward with the closing. And if that closing happens, even if the closing doesn't happen, I want you to be clear on that, because we have situations and test questions where the closing doesn't happen, but all you have to do is bring a ready, willing, and able buyer. But in this particular situation, she signed the contract. She has to pay Todd. All right, that is it for that particular one. Once again, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, so that you are always on top of getting notifications for the KJ method. And I will see you next time. Have a good day.